Good evening, and welcome to the Economic Empowerment Subcommittee meeting. The Economic Empowerment Subcommittee is in conjunction with the African American Task Force set forth by the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus in conjunction with the Justice for All agenda. Before we get started, I would like to say a special thank you to Mr. Foreman for joining us on today, and Jordan Schultes, and any other, Jordan Siemens, and any other guests that we may have, Robert Glenn, for joining us on today. Oh, and of course, Director White, thank you for always being a steward, a great steward. Ms. Green, would you like to take attendance at this time?
Yes. Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker.
Present.
Siobhan White.
Present.
Charlie Weatherspoon.
Present.
Kyle Myers. Louis Victor Morley.
Present.
Dr. Melinda Hudson. Jane Huffington. Representative Larry Lambert.
Present.
Dr. Dan Young.
Present.
Dr. Brittany Hazard. Eunice Guanizia. Derek Deadweiler. Secretary Carol Hubbard. Karen Burton.
Present.
Representative Michael Smith. Representative William Bush.
Present.
Representative Medina Wilson Anton. Andrea Brown Clark. At this time, we do have quorum. We can go to the acceptance of the minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Is there a motion for the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
There's a motion from Director White. Is there a second?
Second. Let's go a second. Louis, you can have it. Louis Morley.
Second by Louis Morley. All in favor, salute with your silence. Motion carries. Ms. Green, would you like to put up the slide, please? Thank you.
So today's topic is the rules and building incentive packages for companies to move to Delaware. Our special guest we have today is Robert Glenn, the State Bank Commissioner, Kurt Foreman, President and CEO of Delaware Prosperity Partnership, and Jordan Schultes from the Director and Division of Small Business.
Thank you, Ms. Green. This time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Foreman. Begin the presentation. And
terrific. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you. I know many of you, and those I don't know, I know of you. So this is wonderful to spend some time with you at the end of a busy week, or almost the end of a busy week. I'm going to share my screen if I can. I have a few slides that I thought might be helpful. And I've already provided these to Ms. Green. So she, can you guys see that? It says moving Delaware forward.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I thought it might be helpful just to set the stage about DPP, what we do, what we don't do, and then share a little bit about incentives. And then hopefully we'll have a great conversation today. But we were created 5 years ago in August. This coming August will be our 5th anniversary. The governor signed legislation on August 17th of 2017. I wasn't here yet. I didn't even know this was in my future at that point, but I'm very blessed to have joined the group in April of 2018. I moved here from Oklahoma City, but my family's from the region. And I think the basic takeaway I want you guys to have is that the intent was, how could we expand our ability to work towards success as a state? And how could we very intentionally involve the private sector? How could they add to the resources, or as I like to say, as a minister's kid, the time, treasure, and talent that was coming together from the public sector? How do we add the private sector to that? And as Deneen Damon, who's one of our board members, was quoted as saying, who better to advise on business recruitment and business retention than the private sector? So people who live every day, both acquiring customers and also are the target of our interest, why not have them at the table? So we have a board that's made up of 19 people that were appointed. There's 4 legislators on the board, including Representative Bill Bush, who's on today, Representative Lyndon Urick, and then Senator Jack Walsh and Senator Brian Pettyjohn. The governor serves as one of our co-chairs, as well as Rod Ward, who is the CEO of CSC and the co-chair of DPP. And then we have, I guess there's 14 private sector folks involved and 5 public sector folks. And our board members cross industries, they cross gender, they cross geography. So we have board members from all 3 counties in Delaware, as well as a variety of experiences that they bring to the table. So we're very proud of that group, and they're very helpful to us. Maybe it's helpful just to sort of categorize what we do, because economic development, as many of you know, is not just one thing. It's not just one group. It's not just one thing. I like to say that when you're building community, that you need to have lots of different people involved. It's not just one group tasked with building community, but there's lots of people who can play a role. But for us, we focus on 4 sort of pillars within our programming. So the one is, we are often the strategic focus or tip of the spear for attraction efforts. So when there's someone who's thinking about, hey, I'll look at Delaware perhaps for future investment and jobs, and that goes for, we go out proactively to get people to put Delaware on their list too. So it's not just the Maytag repairman, wait for the call kind of model that they used to joke about in the commercials. He would always wait for the call to fix the washer. But we both get on the road and tell our story as well as do that. We also are part of, and that's really important, part of the coordinated engagement of existing employers. Because as you all know, it's not just the new person that moves onto your block, but it's the people who live there already that you need to make sure you're doing a good job of taking care of. So we work with lots and lots of partners up and down the state to be ready to help when an existing customer raises their hand or expresses it's something that they'd like to work on. We also spend a lot of time on, and these last 2 I think are really important to our future as a state, and that is, how do we support innovation of all kinds, the kinds of new things that might get going, maybe technical startup, maybe it's a professor at the University of Delaware or Delaware State, or maybe someone who either is or was at DuPont, for example, who's got a great idea for a company that could change the world. How do we make sure they do that in Delaware and hire Delawareans to do that work? And then lastly, as we all know is happening right now, particularly, if companies can't find the talent they need or find ways to develop and keep and attract the talent, perhaps new people to Delaware even. If we can't do that, no matter how good our infrastructure is or our business climate, companies can't grow here. So we try to help on all four of those things. That leaves lots more to be done, and we have lots of partners, which I'm very proud of. I love our name, Delaware Prosperity Partnership. I think it sort of says everything. Delaware's our focus, prosperity is our intent, and partnership is the approach we take. And I actually learned after I had been here a while that that was actually a placeholder name, but I'm glad they kept it because I think it says all the right things. But this slide is really to share with you that we never really are alone in our work. And I actually like it that way. Again, it comes back to how you build community. But there are lots of agencies, including Jordan Schultheis's team that we work with every day. We have folks we work with at the local level, the neighborhood level, utilities, chambers of commerce, all sorts of people up and down the state who have a hand at some point in the process of growing our state. So my mantra to the staff is we never work alone. You can picture that song from Carousel, I'll never walk alone, but we never work alone. Again, that's intentional. We always start with the entire state as our palette, but we focus on what parts of the state a company is most interested in and help them assess any and all parts of that. We also try to, we not only try, but we are as transparent and communicative as possible. Our documents are on our website. Where we do stop or are careful about that, though, is we're often working with companies who are thinking through scenarios and are not exactly sure yet what they want to do. And so we help them do that homework in the safety until they're ready to share their plans. And we often work under NDAs if a company asks us to. But we also interface, and sorry for the typo, we interface with a lot of agencies, including our colleagues at the Division of Small Business. In terms of what we focus on, I thought this might be helpful for some of you who don't follow us every day. A decision was made really early on that perhaps the best way to incrementally benefit Delaware is to focus on what I call the primary sectors of the economy. That doesn't mean the others aren't worthwhile or interesting, but all these sectors that are shown here in this fan picture are ones that do two things. One is they bring other people's dollars into our state. So each of these sectors makes or creates or deals in something that would bring dollars from other people's pockets around the world into the pockets of people in Delaware. And for me, that's among the most important things we can do, because if I have more money in my wallet, you have more money in your wallet or your purse, then all the other services and things that we feel are important to quality of life and prosperity and wealth generation in our community can happen because there's more dollars available to go around. So that's very important, I think. And these are sectors that have it, depending on what part of the state you're in, all of these may have some relevance to just about every part of the state. I also thought it might be helpful to visualize size of company or where they are as part of how we engage. So the best way to think about it is if a firm is elsewhere and outside of Delaware and thinking about coming into Delaware particularly for the first time, we may be the best place to start with them. To help them assess the state and connect with our partners, again, who can be the topical experts, the local experts, the special content experts that they need to talk to before they finish their decision making. We also, by design, tend to be the organization that works with larger firms, and we use 50 to 100 people. That's actually not that large, but there are a tremendous number of firms that are smaller than that. And our colleagues at the Division of Small Business now, because of the way we're structured, have more bandwidth along with partners like the Small Business Development Center and others to work on smaller companies who can be those. The only piece of smaller companies that we sort of can take the lead on, again, this is all voluntary, is when there's a tech startup or someone that has something maybe medical or technical that they're trying to grow. We can help work with our partners on those to, again, scale those up because they often are very competitive. And then, as I mentioned earlier, small existing firms, local businesses, non-technical businesses, retail, there are lots and lots of options in Delaware. The governor likes to say that small business has more opportunity for help now than ever before. And often it's us trying to make sure they know where to go. And so our mantra again at DPP is there's no wrong door. If you start with us, we'll get you to the right person if it's not us, and our partners work the same way. Just a few things that we do. So this is, and I see another typo, I apologize. I was not a good proofreader yesterday. But in terms of supporting employers, so we seek out opportunities both inside the state and outside the state to help grow the economy. We focus on employers who could use support in determining where and how to grow in Delaware. We often are competing with other states, even sometimes other countries. But the process always begins by sitting down with them either virtually nowadays or in person, and we have a conversation about what they're trying to accomplish, what they're thinking about, what are their goals, what are their plans. And sometimes they have 3 or 4 scenarios, so it's not always fully fleshed out when we get started. And then our job is to support them on the different issues that they're wrestling with and try to help them flesh out that for their company. And then lastly, the combination of facilitation, referral, we might refer them to someone who's an expert. We've worked with Robert Glenn, for example, our bank commissioner, on a project where someone needed to talk with that expertise. So we made sure they connected and had a chance to visit with each other. And those kinds of conversations can happen, whether it was with the utility or elected officials, other businesses in the area. We try to do that as often as possible. And then, so what kind of things do we address? So often it's about learning the marketplace. We know Delaware pretty well because we live here and are part of it. Many of you may be natives, but sometimes people who are looking don't know our state very well, or they may know Newcastle County, but they may not know Kent or Sussex County. We had a great project we worked on a couple of years ago that they thought for sure they had to be at the very tip of the top of the state. And we said, that's perfectly fine. We're happy to help you do that. But if there are other solutions that meet your criteria, would you like to know about them? And they said, yes, absolutely. So we found 12, 11 of which were in Kent and Sussex counties. It surprised us, but it was great. And so we had 12 options for them, and they ended up picking Dover, which was not their initial focus. We also aid them in connecting with key people and entities that are relevant to their industry, their project, or situation. I shared an example before. Then we review the inputs that they need. So it could be helping them find real estate options. We're not brokers, but we can connect with partners to make sure we identify all the spaces that would work. Helping them connect with people like Secretary Hubbard and her team at DOL or DelDOT or DENREC or staffing agencies, whatever, around workforce, utilities, zoning, approval processes, just about anything you can think of, we help with. We don't do, but we often facilitate. And then lastly, I really do think this is one of the last steps, is we identify possible incentives that may help make the business case. Because as I like to say, if the project doesn't work, incentives don't fix it. But if the project works, incentives can make it a better solution and make it perhaps the preferred solution. So it never makes up for problems, but it can often help and enhance the positives. So I thought real quickly, a couple things about incentives, because I know it's of interest to you all. So one is DPP does not control incentives. We are actually, as you know, a private nonprofit that was stood up to support the state, but we don't actually control the incentives. We talk about them, we introduce them, we share about them, but we don't control them and we don't manage any of those programs. The programs or funds reside in various levels of government. Many of them reside at the Division of Small Business or a unit called DIDA, which is an authority within the division. But there also are some at the county level, there are some at local levels, and sometimes even some at neighborhood levels, which is all very interesting. We work as a facilitator and a connector to work with partners to make sure, one, are there resources available? Would they work? Are they appropriate? And then we connect. Again, that's not an exclusive role. Other people can do that too. So there's never a guaranteed role for us, but if we can help, we always do. And then we also can help with supporting the application process. Often we've talked people through the forms or said, here's what they're looking for here. We'll be happy to set you up with someone to talk about the questions you have. So ultimately, incentives are, as I mentioned, are meant to enhance a positive opportunity and encourage that activity to happen here versus, say, Maryland or Nevada or wherever else someone's looking. So lastly, here are five categories of some of the incentives that are more common to work with. One is what we call our strategic fund or strat funds, and there are two sides to that. And these are almost all of these programs are programs that Jordan's staff manage. But the strat fund can be for jobs, and that's based on wages and jobs, or it's based on capital investment. And often companies can get both depending on their project. Another one is TIF, that thanks to the legislature about 2 years ago, they approved funds to provide transportation support for projects that just have a gap, if you will, in something that will make a difference to make that project happen versus not happen. And there's a fund that's managed by DelDOT, also working with the Division of Small Business. They have a committee that's been appointed to review those applications, and that group meets 2 or 3 times a year. Site Readiness, which is a brand new program. We're in the first year of it. The deadline, ironically, or coincidentally, is tomorrow for the first set of applications for that. Those go to, again, Division of Small Business, and then we're helping make sure that review all happens in time for people to be reviewed and approved. But that's meant to help private landowners and public owners of land, perhaps a community or a county, to help get those properties ready so that a company who might want to invest there will have an easier time and a quicker time doing that going forward, because we're always competing for time and against other people. There's also something called SBIR Matches, which is a federal program where we'll put in $50,000, and the will is Delaware, not me. But the Division of Small Business has funds that will match dollars for technical companies who are going after federal dollars for research grants. And there's a way Delaware can support them if they meet the criteria. And then there's a whole slew of tax credits that many companies don't know about or don't think about that are available often through the Department of Finance. And those just require you notifying the company or the department that you plan to use them if you meet the criteria. So there's not necessarily approval processes for those. So I'm going to stop there. That's a lot to cover in one fell swoop, but I thought that might give you guys a sense of a little bit about how incentives work from our standpoint. But again, it's only one piece of the process. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I can bring these back up again, Representative Dorsey Walker, if anyone has questions.
Thank you so much for sharing and for caring, actually.
Absolutely. It's a fun job. I love selling Delaware.
Something told me you were a PK. I could just feel it in your spirit. I would like to say that having this robust conversation and seeing those slides is very, very helpful. The other thing that I wanted to share with you when you talked about You Never Walk Alone, I played that one year in my piano recital. Thought I'd just share that fun fact with you. But nevertheless, I would like to go, and I thank you for acknowledging Representative Bill Bush as being a member of your organization. He is amazing.
We're glad to have him involved.
Yes, me too. Trust me on that one. Does anyone from the committee have any questions or concerns? And at this time, Jordan, I would like to give you an opportunity to share too, if there's anything that you would like to share before we have a robust conversation.
Yeah, I didn't bring any prepared slides just because I didn't want to put anybody to sleep this late in the afternoon. Like Kurt said in all of his slides, we work together on so many of those different programs. And, our role really falls into the administration of the program. So when we get those applications in, and a lot of those folks have worked with Kurt and his team, maybe they didn't, and that's okay too. Kurt has shared that, the no wrong door mantra is what they go by. And we've really adopted that with our team as well, because we want to make sure that people are getting connected to the resources that they need, no matter who they talk to and where they entered the system from. So that's how we approach everything. So when we get the application, we do a couple common things no matter what the program is. And the very first thing we do is run compliance on all of the applications. And that just means that we're reaching out to our sister agencies in the state and just making sure that everybody that's applying to get financial assistance through our division is also in good standing with other divisions, because what we don't want is to find out that they owe a lot of back taxes, or they have a major labor law violation or something egregious like that. And then they're getting money out of the strategic fund or one of the other programs. That's definitely not something that we want to see. So always the very first thing that we check. We also have a team of financial analysts that take a look at all the applications and provide an analysis on each one. In a lot of instances, we're talking about a pretty substantial sum of money. So those applications require 3 years of financial statements. So they're actually doing a really detailed dive into the finances of each company and then giving a written report on the sustainability and ensuring that. The standard under Delaware Code is actually that we have to ensure each applicant is financially viable and able to carry out the project that they have proposed. So that's the lens that we're looking at everything in. Once we get through that process, we really move into the contract administration phase and then follow up from there. A lot of our programs require reporting, so we're keeping in touch with folks for anywhere from 1 to 3 to 5 years, sometimes even longer, so we can keep track of all the great things that they have produced in Delaware.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. And Robert, Glenn, if you wanted to share anything before we start the question and answers among the members of the committee.
Thank you, Representative. Thanks for inviting me to join you today. I'm Robert Glenn. I'm the State Bank Commissioner. Our agency regulates a variety of financial services businesses and banks and trust companies here in Delaware. As mentioned previously, the state has various grant and other programs to support businesses. None of those programs are administered by the State Bank Commissioner. However, because we regulate financial institutions, some of those businesses that are coming to Delaware might need a license with us, or if they want to do business as a state bank or a state trust company, they would need a charter from our agency. So we'd be glad to meet with them to discuss the process for getting a bank or trust company charter or another type of financial services license. And also our agency administers the bank franchise tax. So if the business would be a state bank or trust company that would be subject to the tax, then we could explain to them how the tax works. So that's the role that we would play.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. At this time, I would like to open it up to any of the committee members who have any questions or concerns about anything you've previously heard from today's presenters.
Representative?
Yes.
I've been fortunate to meet Kurt and Jordan, so that was great. And I've been involved in a lot of these things way back in the 80s when you're talking about businesses moving.
You were very young. You were very young, right?
Yeah, I was in Pittsburgh when we were the third largest corporate city in the U.S. So spent a little time in Oklahoma City with the University of Oklahoma. So all those things. So I'm following you around, Kurt. But the thing I have, and I know things have changed, and that's how this committee came about. As we look at things, and I think you guys' position, your role is extremely great and important to things that we do, maybe somewhat of a hybrid, but as we work with you to get to understand all the protocols and things of that nature, because when it comes to some entities, some of the minority entities, they don't come all the time, fully prepared, fully dressed, because I dealt with them when I was in banking at Mellon. is that we have to do things a little bit different. I know there are some statutes and things that you guys have to follow. But the question, as I get to it, is as we go down this road, this new road, and you guys been established for 5 years, how do we kind of, work in that relationship? I know we have to talk about it more because you're under certain things that you have to do. But as we look at something a little bit different, how we kind of, make some of those things work as we bring in minority entities who are very, very interested in Delaware. I know a few folks who have tried, and even the ones like with Louis, who are here and are trying to make a way to do something differently and expand.
I'll take a first crack at it, and we can certainly go back and forth a little bit. But one of the things that I think are the structures we've created is we're sort of at the right corners, if you will, the right intersections, so that hopefully we are accessible enough that people will get to one of those doors we sort of talked about. And again, that could be a lot of different places. That might be with Mike Bowman and Danita Henderson at the Small Business Development Center, who, quite honestly, I've worked in several states. We have one of the best small business development centers of anywhere in the United States. But they do a lot of what I would call capacity building and helping people get that running start that they may need from, because you heard some things about numbers of years of, for certain programs, numbers of years of financials and all. So if someone's at a little earlier stage, the good news is we have partners that can step in or help. That could be everything from the Wilmington Alliance, who does a lot of work, particularly in Wilmington, particularly with budding entrepreneurs, maybe even people who are just stepping into entrepreneurship for the first time, to the SBDC and a lot of others. And the private sector can play a role too. A good banker who can work with their client, who may have started out as a personal client and now is turning into a business client or opening their first accounts as a new business. There's a lot of different ways that help can happen. So what we tend to do is, again, it's a little bit of not triage, but assessing and getting them to the right partner who has the expertise. And sometimes even the CDFIs, who are great, we have great ones here in the state, and other groups that are advocate for particular neighborhoods or particular parts of our state are great places for these people to sort of get in. But there's also sometimes a company's not at the right evolution point for some grants or some things, but there may be other ways to assist them. And sometimes that's introducing them to people who can be everything from mentors to maybe even one of their first customers or something. So I think there's a lot of really interesting ways, creative ways, and it's sort of that's why it takes a lot of people thinking about it consciously and saying, how can we help? I'm so thrilled that Ayanna and the team at the Delaware Black Chamber got started in the middle of the pandemic. I give her kudos for being brave to start a new chamber in the middle of a pandemic. We're members. I'm very pleased with the work they've done. There are 14 or 15 other chambers up and down the state who can all be helpful in their parts of the state. So again, there's just a lot of potential partners, and it's not always easy for people to realize there's help out there, even when it may be all around them. So we have to make sure we do a good job of telling them that, there are places you can get help.
Okay. Thanks, Kurt.
Mr. Witherspoon, maybe this is Louis, maybe I can chime in a little bit there, being a business owner here in the state. So with someone like me, right, I got funds from the CDFI, but it was pandemic funds. If you were to go to them and you're trying to expand and grow your business, and I'm going to touch on a few things you mentioned. If you're going to go to them trying to expand your business, they have lending requirements that's similar to the banks. You're not going to be able to qualify for that loan. And you mentioned the private sector, right? We sell to the state a lot. And because we're not a prime, there's a bonding issue right there you have to meet to be awarded a contract as a prime. So we do a lot of sub work where you say private, we submit bids to these guys, a lot. They're just not motivated to work with businesses like us. One, there's no incentives, right? The good faith effort in the state is a good faith effort. There's no requirements. So as we continue this conversation, there are a lot of things that we can kind of bring to your attention. So as you look at this, when you're saying there's several people talking about this, and guys like us who are living it will be able to bring that to your attention, so you're able to see that and be like, okay, this is something that might be different. In my case, I had to go out of state to someone else that saw our drive and what we're doing and say, you know what, hey, I'll take a chance with you guys. And that's how we're able to do some of the stuff we're doing. And sometimes just knocking down the doors and saying, look, I can help meet this requirement. Why are you letting this guy just skate along and not using local businesses to meet this requirement? It's good to bring guys from the outside, but if we have local businesses here that we can develop to compete, that's also good.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think you make a great point, and I've never lived anywhere where there wasn't a little bit of a hill to climb if you were a local company. They're like, oh, well, the people elsewhere are better at this, so I can't hire locally. Creative firms, all sorts of things. I've seen it happen over and over again. So you bring up a good point, and that's why the discussion needs to be very overt and happen frequently. DPP is more the sales team for Delaware, so we don't get involved in the details of policy. We can certainly provide feedback we hear from companies to our legislators or to business groups, but we don't make policy. We simply sell the product that is available and hopefully getting better and better all the time. There's one area where we've been helping that might be of interest to this group that I should have thought about mentioning. It happened last year and it's in process right now. It's called Startup 302. And we instigated it last year with partners at UD and a variety of partners, public and private. And it's a pitch competition for early stage companies. Our focus last year and our focus again this year are 100% on underrepresented founders. We're working a lot with Gary Johnson, who's been a real maverick in the space, a great Delawarean who champions that. And so last year we gave away $275,000 of prize money to underrepresented founders and companies that were being started. This year, our money's a little bit less. I think it's around 180,000, but we're doing it again right now. The application process for people to be considered is underway right now. I can send a link to the representative and Ms. Green, and she can pass it along to all of you. But we're really excited to have folks get attention and folks get a platform to share the really great and cool ideas that are happening up and down the state. So, but to Mr. Morley's point, there are types of businesses, maybe construction, other things that sometimes have a hill to climb. And certainly that's something that should be a topic for broad discussion.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Burton, and I want to thank you so much for compiling this information and being an organization that has taken the time to look at all of the incentives that are available across the state of Delaware. I will tell you, in my service to the city of Wilmington and government many years ago, we actually put on an event that was called Advantage Wilmington that was very successful. Brian Murphy chaired that with the Wilmington UDAC Corporation at that time. And it gave an opportunity to showcase Wilmington by inviting various real estate brokers from the tri-state area and above to come in and find out more about Wilmington. And a wonderful package was put together that outlined all of the incentives, all of the business resources, primarily what you've done right here was done with the city of Wilmington many years ago. And then after that, the Advantage Wilmington, it was a huge success into getting businesses interested. From there, the city of Wilmington had a focus to make sure that they were participating more with conferences and events where you had an opportunity to showcase Wilmington in different states. So since you are saying that you act almost as a sales entity for the state of Delaware to sell it, how often do you go out to events where you have an opportunity to promote the state of Delaware?
Great question. And again,
outside of the state.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, most of our travel would be to outside. I think it's really important to tell each other that we're a great place, because sometimes we forget and we're a little hard on ourselves, which is okay, because we can always be better. But we want people elsewhere to be talking about Delaware. So we do a lot of that. Unfortunately, the pandemic put a bit of a wrench into that, as you would expect. Many conferences were canceled, or they became just like this. We'd see each other in boxes, and you can't network quite as well when you're in a little box as you would if you could actually walk up to someone and talk to them. But we go to industry events that are in some key sectors. We're actually doing one next week on Wilmington. It's interesting you brought that up. This will be our second time we've done this. We're doing this with a group called Biz Now, which is a commercial real estate marketing platform that covers the US and beyond. And we're doing a Wilmington-based session, both in person and virtual, on the 24th. It was rescheduled from earlier this month. And we have two panels talking about the opportunities in the Wilmington area and the city of Wilmington. So we did that a couple years ago, and we're doing that again this next week. I'm going to New York on Tuesday to talk to international business people at an event that Delaware is being recognized. We were recognized for our work engaging, and so we'll be able to be there. But our team, our goal is to get out and tell our story, not just to ourselves, but to people who may not be thinking about Delaware. So I'm so glad you think that way, because I think that's really important. I think when I first got here, I felt like our biggest competition was that people weren't thinking of us. It wasn't that they hadn't heard of Delaware, they just weren't considering us. And we have to make sure they do, because they'll miss out if they don't give us a good shot. And I think that all helps then all our local businesses when those companies come in that's a new customer or maybe new customers, as well as their existing base of customers.
Yes, I will say that the feedback that I have heard from companies that decide to invest into the city of Wilmington have found that it was a very easy process in working in the departments. And how often do you communicate with the Mayor's Office of Economic Development with regards
we work
to
with Jeff Flynn quite a bit. So they're one of our most active partners. I rely on him to make sure the mayor and the mayor's team is up to date. But we visit, periodically, and we do formal calls. Our business development team has formal calls with our partners in Sussex, Kent, Newcastle County, and the city of Wilmington monthly, if not every other week. And so we go over details of projects. We talk about what are they excited about, what are they dealing with. We're working right now with the Riverfront team on some development for the other side of the river that we're so excited about seeing develop in new ways. So I'm very bullish on the future in Wilmington and lots of other places up and down the state.
That is so great. Well, I'm going to speak about Wilmington because my heart has been there for 15 years when I served in the Mayor's Office of Economic Development. So with that said as well, one of the things that we heard a lot several years ago, and I would imagine that the conversation can still be the same, and that is the talent for the businesses that wanted to come into Wilmington and the ones that you were considering as a new business to come into the city and the surrounding areas. There was a concern about crime. There was a concern about housing. We did, it was my honor to participate in the BRAC relocation program, where we were trying to engage in businesses as well as employees to reside in Wilmington instead of going all the way down to Maryland. So we actually put a great package together, including a tour to highlight the best parts of the city. We had a couple of people interested. Yeah, it was great. But however, there were just concerns, and we weren't able to grab as many as we wanted to from that BRAC relocation project that came from Jersey down to Maryland. So how are you communicating to companies that have a concern about the talent and housing and protection?
Well, I think you've hit on all great issues, and a few thoughts. One is talent. most people assume we talk mostly about real estate and incentives. I would say most of our conversation is about talent, because if you can't find the talent, it doesn't matter whether it's a pretty spot to put your office or your manufacturing facility or whatever. So we talk talent all the time, and that's important to existing employers too. And today, you know, we're all hearing about people, the great resignation, and people being choosier about where they work or whatever. So this is a hot topic for companies in 2022, up and down the state and other places too. So it's a key topic. It's really important to not only talk about what they'll experience now, but can they find people over a period of time and grow that workforce? So we often talk about not only the schools we have here and the career pathways and things that exist in Delaware, which we should all be very proud of, but there's also almost 100 colleges and universities within about 2 hours, and those people are just as fair game to come become part of our success in Delaware as the folks who grew up here. So it's a whole combination. Then you talked about crime. Interestingly, crime in schools are important topics for people, but I'm not sure. I think you might be surprised that the people who talk most about that are our local residents. The people I hear it from most are us, not from people who are looking from outside. Now, that's not to say that they don't want to be in a safe place, but I think people may have, you know, I've lived in New York area. I grew up in New York area. I've lived in Atlanta. I've lived in Louisiana. I've lived in Oklahoma. I've been chasing Charlie around while he's chasing me around. And, but anyway, you know, that issue is a common one, but I think we have a better story to tell. And sometimes the overhang of people's impressions are not up to date. And so it's often important to share that maybe, you know, they say, oh, well, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was such and such. Well, let me share a quick story about schools, because this one makes me laugh when I think about it again. But I was here about 3 weeks. I went to several receptions, not for me, but to meet people in the area. And I had someone ask me if I was living in Delaware. And I said, well, of course I live in Delaware. And they said, oh, you might, you know, I thought maybe since you might have kids, you might be living in Pennsylvania. And I said, well, my job is to sell Delaware, so why would I do that? They didn't know my kids are grown. I'm older than I look, I guess, but my kids are grown and I didn't have to worry about that. Not that it was a problem. I live in the Colonial School District here in Delaware now. But the person was sort of telegraphing to me that schools might be an issue that I should be aware of. And so I've asked people, well, tell me, you know, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And they'd share their story. And what was interesting is I'd say, well, I'm sorry, is your child 16 now, 17? They said, oh no, my child's 38. And they were telling me a 22-year-old story about schools. And at that, my kids weren't even born then. So, or yes, they were, but not by much. So it's interesting. Sometimes, even though we have our hearts in the right place, we're either sharing outdated information or we maybe are pointing out something that people may not see as much of a problem as we do. The other thing I would say is that people want to come to a place that's getting better, that the product's improving and that the people there care about it and that they are excited about its future. That optimism is why places like Atlanta and Charlotte and places like that are successful, is people catch that optimism when they go there. But the reality is they don't expect us to have fixed everything. In fact, maybe they want to help be a part of the solution. Maybe they want to come to a place where there's a role for them to play in the future direction of that community. So I always take encouragement that we're getting new people looking. Maybe they'll come be a part of with us and they'll get involved and make a difference in the places they choose to live. But I have lots of people I've met that love living in Wilmington or love living in a certain part of the state that maybe others don't see as their place. So that's long sermon, my first sermon as a PK today. Sorry about that.
We'll pass the collection plate after the meeting for you. But I appreciate that explanation. Is very thorough. Are there any?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burton.
Thank you, Karen. Great. I'm glad you were active in the way you were.
She still is too. Any other questions or concerns from any committee members? Excuse me. Get down. Sorry about that. My aunt's cat decided to make a...
Well, pets are an important part of the process too.
Yeah, she decided to, just, I'm a filmmaker by trade, so she just did her little cameo, that's all. Prayerfully she won't do it again. Any other questions or concerns or anything else?
I do. Thank you, Kurt, for that presentation. Good to learn more about DPP and all that you guys do. I thought I heard you mention something about maybe helping the companies select a site or select a location here in the state. I look at things at an equity lens. Do you or have you, or is there an initiative to look at some sites near or in underserved communities in the state to help build those communities up?
That's a great question, and in every place I've worked, it's something that you should be doing, and we are. So, a couple ways that's why I'm so excited about the site readiness program that Representative Dorsey Walker and Bush and all the others put in place, Mr. Lambert, that put in place this past year, because I think that's going to make a real difference. But so our commitment is we don't steer projects. So we never say, well, you should look only here. This is the place you should go. Or as my joke goes, a certain mayor in a town is mad at me, so I'm going to put a project there so that person is not mad at me anymore. The company drives the process, and like the project that ended up in Dover, our stance is always we're gonna talk about the entire state, and unless you will not allow us to, we're going to show you solutions that work in every part of the state. And if they hone it in a little bit, we'll focus on that. But we often push back on those barriers and say, tell me why you have to be only 5 miles from the interstate. Is that really truly a factor, or is that just you thought would be an easy way to reduce the homework? So, but to your point, I think the 25 opportunity zones that were created in Delaware is one way to draw some attention to, I think, really great places with an incentive, interestingly, that could drive demand. I wish those had been more successful to date. They really have not been. And there's probably a long laundry list, not just in Delaware, but nationally, why those, and the pandemic certainly didn't help us. But yes, so the other thing we do is we try to encourage our partners to be thinking about, are there sites that don't get attention that you could draw attention to? Because we're only as good as the information that we have access to. So if my worst fear is that a company chooses somewhere else, not Delaware, because they couldn't find a site, and then 2 weeks later we find the perfect site and it was under our noses and we didn't know about it. But site readiness is going to help the public sector, perhaps a town that owns a piece of property, or maybe a private landowner who has a piece of property, make it that much better. Maybe it's utility extension, maybe it's doing the homework that's necessary to make it available. But that's not meant for 1,000-acre sites. It could be, I think our minimum, Jordan, is 20 acres. So again, that could be a part of City of Wilmington or City of Dover, where there's something that needs to be done to make a site even more attractive for future opportunities. So we'll see. Tomorrow's the deadline for the first wave of applications. I'm hoping we'll get a bunch, but we can probably, to your point, Ms. White, we can probably encourage people if the wave either isn't as large as we hoped, or that there's going to be more money next year if it all works well with the budget, that we can press on people to encourage them to step up and make sites available. But for me, it's about finding great jobs for people, whether it's right in their neighborhood or nearby. And then hopefully that has a ripple effect. And then there's sites that, you know, because there's more money in our pockets, people will want to put in a new barber shop or a new restaurant or such and such in different parts of the area. So I'm super excited about the Reach Riverside project and all that's going to happen there. And hopefully those kinds of committed resources can be done in more and more places around the state. Because I'd love to see Laurel be just as successful as, you know, pick another place, Greenville or something. We want lots of vibrant communities up and down the state.
Thank you.
But if you know of people who have a piece of property, you should always let us know or let them know to contact us, and we can get them on our free database, which makes it easy. They don't have to pay anything to get it visible. And then if there's more resources needed, we can direct them to those kinds of programs when they're ready, when the next deadline comes up.
That's great information. Thank you, Mr. Foreman.
Delaware's done a nice job in the last few years of really creating a toolkit that's broad enough for us to make a real difference. We, not just DPP, but we as a group of leaders and communities, there's more and more tools out there to make a difference.
Thank you. Great question, Director White. Are there any other questions or concerns or anything that any of the committee members would like to bring to the attention of our guest?
While they're thinking, I have one plug for you. We created a site to sell Delaware to people, not to companies. And it's meant to help companies recruit someone who doesn't know what Delaware's like, or to celebrate what's great about Delaware. And it's got a great name to it too. It's called Live, Love, Delaware. I'd urge you to look at it. It's very diverse because it covers the whole state. We have a group of ambassadors. In fact, Mr. Young, Dr. Young is one of our ambassadors. He's on the site. You can read about him and see whether the profile we did of him is accurate to your knowledge of Dr. Young. But so we've done that and tried to tell stories of people who have chosen to make Delaware their home. Often people who are not from here, because we want people who are thinking about it to say, well, if I grew up there, of course I'd like it. But if I'm new, will I like it? And will it be somewhere that would be a great place to live? And so we're really thrilled with that. We encourage you to send us ideas of people that would be great to cover, and also share it with people who you're talking to who may not know enough about Delaware, but maybe they'll come join us here in the future.
Thank you.
Representative,
yes,
Ms. Jane Covington does have her hand raised.
Thank you. Ms. Covington, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I apologize. My question was answered, and I thought that I had lowered my hand. This has been very interesting. And there are so many questions that I have that I can't ask them all now, because I have individuals in our community who would find this information very, very valuable. And so that's why I asked, I've been writing down names for individuals that I can contact after this event is over and get further information from them. But thank you.
We love nothing better than going to speak to a group. So if there's a group that any of you think we should go speak to sometime, we're happy to do it. So, and I'm sure our colleagues and some of our partners would as well.
Okay, well, thank you. Do you have, is your contact information in the chat room?
I can do it right now. I'll put it there right now. But yes, you can also go to our website called, it's a great website too, called Choose Delaware, and all our contact information is there. But I am more than happy to.
Oh, that's fine.
Ms. Green, I don't see a chat, but if you could send her my contact information, Ms. Green has it.
All right. Thank you very much.
And you're welcome to put that last slide back up, Mr. Foreman, with your contact information, if you'd like to share your screen.
Also, this is Louis. Will you guys make the presentation, that slide available, or is that something that's proprietary?
Yes, I have the presentation and we'll send it out.
Thank you.
I'm not sure it's showing, but if not, that's my cell phone and my email. You're welcome to holler at me anytime, literally or figuratively.
Well, we definitely can see it. Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate that. And my apologies, we were also joined by Secretary Hubbard. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge her.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. So thank you. Thank you so very much for this evening and for coming here and joining us and sharing all of this information about DPP. It's very informative. We greatly appreciate your assistance on today. We'll probably have you back sooner than later to have
anytime.
Yes, anytime. Yes, and what will ultimately happen, I believe Ms. Covington will probably have a contingency from Sussex County on here for the next presentation.
Well, Ms. Covington, you can also reach out to one of my favorite Sussex County people, Faye Blake, who joined our board this past year. We're so glad to have Faye involved on our board.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if there isn't anything else that anyone would like to share, thank you again to our guests, Mr. Foreman, Ms. Schulte. Jordan, please tell me how to pronounce your last name.
Schulteis.
Schulteis, thank you. Ms. Jordan Schulteis and Mr. Robert Glenn, thank you so much for joining us on this evening. At this time, I shall entertain a motion to adjourn.